Hi, my name's Eunice Wong from Landan Studio, and I'm going to talk a little bit today about how we worked with stormwater in designing this garden. I'm the landscape architect at Landan. We're a mom and pop design firm, and with my husband, Sigmund Lerner, and mother-in-law, Lisa Fischetti, we designed the gray building in the back and the rain gardens surrounding the building. If you're not familiar, a rain garden is basically a planted area where the surrounding surfaces drain into. It collects rainwater and allows that water to be used up by the plants and also infiltrated into the ground. So the owners had purchased the site next to them and decided to build an ADU, an accessory dwelling unit, and wanted to deal with the flooding issues that they found on site. Where I'm standing is the former property line between the two buildings, and there is a street that cuts off the flow of water that would normally run from this hill to Lake Carnegie, and there's an inlet that allows that water to flow under the street. But since they previously experienced flooding on this site, they really wanted to increase the ability of the soil to take in that water and to absorb that water on site and make use of it. I'm going to talk a little bit about how we did that with these rain gardens. And that's important to prevent pollution and flooding of our waterways, but it's also important for the groundwater to recharge, because most of our drinking water in the world comes from underground resources, and that includes the municipality of Princeton. When we got to this site, it was a patchy lawn and soil was exposed in a lot of places. Where it looked very compacted. It was dry and hard and formed a shiny surface so that rainwater had nowhere to go and it would pool and breed mosquitoes. So our goals were to plant densely, plant a diversity of plants, and to reintroduce decay into the nutrient cycle of the soil. And that helps it build structure, it helps promote growth, and that is key to improving infiltration into the soil. Planting densely means that there's a buffer for the rain when it falls. Planting a diversity means that you fill seasonal gaps in time so that there's always something growing, and there are different root structures breaking up the ground. With trees that were cut down, we asked for wood chips, and we blanketed the site that you see here with 2 to 3 inches of wood chips once 4 years ago, and the plants have since taken over. We also asked for logs to be cut into sizes that I could roll, and we placed them here as a visual feature, and it forms a bank to the path that's beside me from the swale. They also retain a lot of water, so as they decompose, they absorb water, and they also release nutrients slowly. So now we're down in the meadow where we seeded this area without the use of herbicides. They say the second year of a meadow is very yellow. We're in the 3rd year of this meadow and it's still pretty yellow for the biennial species, and that's probably because they're battling out the weeds that are coming up, and that's because we didn't use herbicides to kill everything before we seeded. Next to me here is probably something you'll recognize, mugwort, which is a very important herb in Japanese, Korean, and Chinese cultures. And if you learn more about what you pull before you pull it, you might be surprised by what you find. Not using herbicides means that we're comfortable harvesting, using, and eating the weeds that we find. Lamb's quarters, for example. A lot of these weeds actually are important food sources around the world. Another reason not to use herbicides is because the soil in our area has a high clay content, and in this type of soil, chemicals like glyphosate are more likely to persist. So applying one time for a site preparation may not be as ephemeral as you might think. And then lastly, we're also right next to this drain here, and so we wouldn't want any of that leaching into the water system. This drain, it was here before we got here, and it served to prevent flooding on this site, which it wasn't successful at doing. But instead of taking it out, we kept it in place and we designed the gardens around it as if it weren't here. So the owners were also interested in the supplementary effects of a green roof. Now, the cost benefit of a green roof is tricky to figure out for a residential building because why you want a green roof is to reduce solar gain in the building, but the effects of a green roof are comparable to that of a light reflective material, which is cheaper to install. And then it also reduces the volume of stormwater shedding from the roof, but you're limited by how much saturated weight the roof joists can handle. And that's why a green roof makes more sense for a larger building where it's structured to handle those loads anyways. But in this case, we have 4 to 6 inches of green roof media. You can see that that limits how much water that can take. That means we can plant mostly non-native sedums and a few native species. So we have butterfly milkweed and dense blazing star. While it reduces some of the water that sheds from the roof, there is still stormwater that continues on through the system and into the gutters and down onwards the downspouts, and that rejoins the rain gardens. So we talked about planting for stormwater management, but where to begin? A good place to start is at the bottom of your downspout. The downspout here is buried underground and runs about 10-15 feet away from the building, which is a good amount of space to keep. If your downspout currently drains to the surface of the ground, you can either regrade that to run into a planted area for your rain garden. You can put stones in so that it's a sort of dry creek bed. If your downspout runs into the ground and disappears into you don't know where, you could cut that off, cap the ground portion, and let the above ground portion run into, as I said, a dry creek bed, grade it how you will. And your rain garden, it should be sized to the amount of roof area that is draining to that downspout. You can hold the water in or divert its course using stones, boulders, logs, whatever works, grading that topography. And then to make a list of plants that you want to plant, take note of sun, shade, soil type. You can order a soil test from Rutgers University if you don't know about your soil. And take your notes to our local native plant nurseries, which the ones I like to visit are Gino's Native Plant Nursery in Wrightstown, PA, and Bowman's Hill Wildflower Preserve, also in Pennsylvania. We used a lot of nursery plugs here, which are smaller plant material, deeply rooted. They come 50 plants to a tray. They're easy to plant. You plug them in, literally, and they're typically used in landscape restoration projects where there isn't irrigation. You don't have to water, and you just mulch and you plant, and the plants will take over it. It allows you to plant densely and economically. Kind Earth Growers is a good resource for plugs, and Izell Native Plants is also an online retailer for you to check out. The boulder that I'm sitting on was dug up during construction. I find it easiest to design a garden using the materials that we find on site, and I hope that you will too. Let yourself be inspired by what you find. It's August now, and we're going to let all of these plants stand through the fall and into the winter. The seed heads are an important food source for overwintering birds, and the stems are a nesting site for our pollinators. Now, the scale of this project is quite ambitious, but the principles that I've talked about are applicable to a garden of any size. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and I hope that it inspires you to get into your garden.